So Apple did something I didn't expect, and honestly, neither did the tech world. You probably heard it floating around. The MacBook Neo just dropped about 2 months ago, and it starts at just $599. Apple, $599. I hinted about it in my last video, but today we're going into the deep end. We're talking about the good, we're talking about the bad, and who should buy it, specifically for us in Nigeria. If that sounds very interesting to you, then stick around to the end of the video. Welcome back or welcome to my channel. My name is Folaranmi Erastus, and you already know what we do here. We talk about things tech and the latest gist in the world of tech. And today we'll be talking about the MacBook Neo. Okay, before we get into specs, let me give you the context you actually need. Before now, Apple's cheapest MacBook was the MacBook Air, which starts around $1,100. And for us here in Nigeria, it means that using the exchange rate, it's about 1.5 million Naira. That's not a budget laptop. It's the price of a car. So Apple dropping a laptop of $599, which is $499 in case you're a student, was not on my radar this year. So industry people called it a sensation. Reviewers called it a budget laptop busting portable. And PC companies, let's just say nobody was celebrating at HP or Dell during the release week. Let's start with what you can actually see and feel. That is the build. We have full aluminum chassis, 4 color combinations. We have indigo, we have blush, we have citrus, and we have silver. And here is something reviewers keep mentioning. The laptop can open with one finger, just like every other MacBook can. The hinge is perfectly counterbalanced. It's a little detail, but it really matters, especially in a laptop that is that price at $599. Most $599 laptop actually come probably with plastic. The hinge is probably terrible, the battery is terrible, but the Neo doesn't feel like a budget laptop. It just looks like one on paper. Okay, so the chip Apple used in the MacBook Neo is the A18 Pro, and if that sounds familiar, it's actually the chip found in the iPhone 16 Pro. It's a 6-core CPU, 5-core GPU, 16-core neural engine, and 8 GB of unified memory. Now, the 8 GB is something that might give some of you a pause, and something I'll address in the bad section. But generally, if you're someone that just likes gaming, browsing, document loading, and light video editing, this chip is genuinely fast. So going into the display, the MacBook Neo has a 13-inch LRD display, which is the liquid retina display, 2408 by 1506 resolution, and 500 nits brightness, which is great for even outdoor viewing. Now, to be precise, this is not OLED, it's an IPS LCD screen with a liquid retina branding, if you get what I mean. But here's the truth, 500 nits at that price still beats most Windows PC in that price range. Most of them are just shipped probably around 250 to 400 nits, not even close to the 500 nits that Apple gives. Now let's go into repairability. This one genuinely shocked me when I read it at iFixit teardown. The MacBook Neo is the most repairable MacBook in 14 years. Let that sink in. 14 years. For those of us who know how painful and expensive MacBook repairs are, battery replacement, cracked screen, this is actually a meaningful change. The Neo runs Apple Intelligence, Apple's on-device AI system, writing tools, image cleanup, notification summaries, and a smarter Siri. Though this is still a work in progress, but we can see Apple getting better and better at it. And because the A18 Pro has a 16-core neural engine, it handles this on the device itself. That's the MacBook Neo itself, and not on the cloud. So your data stays in your device or your laptop, and it doesn't need a strong internet to work. So we're going into the bad. We're talking about the battery life. Apple advertises 18 hours of video streaming. That sounds really amazing, but in the real world, does that hold up so well? David's 2D's real world test on the MacBook Neo showed that the MacBook Neo just has a 7 hours 48 minutes battery life under light load, which he compared to the MacBook M4, which had 11.5 hours of battery life under the same condition. Why is this important? The MacBook Neo has 36.5 watt hour battery. Even some Windows PC like the Dell XPS or the Windows Aspire have bigger batteries than the MacBook Neo, even at that same price range. And especially for us here in Nigeria, where we have issues with our lighting, we need a laptop that is way stronger than the MacBook Neo. So if the battery is a concern for you, probably you should get a better laptop or a better Windows laptop, so as not to have or fall into the issue of battery. Also, the MacBook Neo doesn't have a backlit keyboard, so in dim rooms or in places where there are bad lightings, you have to take into consideration that the MacBook Neo doesn't have a backlit keyboard. But you should also know that we also have a good lighting from the screen of our keyboard of our laptop, so that could replace the backlit keyboard, if you get what I mean. Is it a deal breaker? No, not really. At $599, you can see that it's not too bad to begin with, but obviously, as I've said before, if you are going for or looking for a laptop with a better battery, then probably you should take that into consideration. So we'll be going into the fact that the MacBook Neo also has just 2 USB ports. You should also know that the USB 2 is going to be slower for transfer speed, or when you're transferring files into the MacBook or out of the MacBook. So it just has one fast port and one slow port. So if that's also a deal breaker for you, probably you shouldn't get that. It also doesn't come with MagSafe. There's no HDMI port. There's no SD slots. So if those things are deal breakers for you, then probably you shouldn't go for the MacBook Neo, because it's just for basic use. So if you're just testing, checking your emails and just simple basic tasks or everyday tasks, then you should probably go for a better laptop if that's not your daily deal. Also, a big deal breaker is the fact that the MacBook Neo only comes with the 8GB unified memory, and it is not upgradable. The RAM is unified, so the chip and the RAM are unified or soldered together, so it is not upgradable. And for everyday tasks, as I've said before, it's very fine. But if you're an heavy multitasker, then you might feel the ceiling faster than you think, because the 8GB RAM fills up so quickly. It also gives you the option of upgrading the storage from 256 to 512, and this also adds with that the Touch ID. So no 16GB option for the MacBook Neo, and the 8GB is going to be a ceiling, especially for those that as I've said before, the multitaskers, because the 8GB fills up so quickly than you would expect. So you should consider that also when you're trying to purchase the laptop. The display is also slightly behind the MacBook Air. It has no P3 color, it has no promotion display, it has no True Tone. You're just getting sRGB color space at 500 nits, which I must say is still very good. The display is still better than most Windows laptop in its price range, but still it's still not as good as the Pros or the Airs. So in everyday use, you might not notice the difference, but when you begin to go into creatives and you need color accuracy, then it might be very important for you to get a better laptop. So if you're a designer or photo editor or video editor, then you should take note of that. So let's talk about what it actually means for us here in Nigeria and actually buying it here in Nigeria. $599 sounds very affordable, but when we look at the exchange rate, you find out that it's around 800,000 naira, which can vary depending on where you are planning to buy. And yes, the question is, 800,000 naira the right buy, especially for a laptop with just 8GB of RAM? Or is it just better to just get, if you're interested in the MacBook, the refurbished M2, which is probably also around the same price? So if you are a student that requires something that is the latest and is reliable and has proper warranty, then the MacBook Neo might make more sense for you to get, because it's more recent and it's not that bad of a choice. But if you're a creative and you need something better, probably it's better for you to, or you're a video editor or anything creative at all, a developer, then it's better for you to just get a slightly better laptop with a slightly better spec, refurbished around the same price. So after all that, who is the MacBook Neo actually for? So buy it if you are a student trying out their first MacBook and you don't want to go into the deep end. You just want to try something simple and something that will not cost you so much, even though 800,000 naira is not a small money. But if you're just looking for something simple for browsing and for doing basic homework and stuff like that, then the MacBook Neo is not a bad option. As I've said before, skip it if you're a developer or doing anything creative. The MacBook Neo is not Apple's best laptop. It certainly was not made for that, but it can be a segue into entering into the Mac or the Apple's ecosystem, especially for those that are wishing that they could afford a Mac. I think this is very affordable and it's also recent, so it's easy for you to use it for a longer time. And in a country where the exchange rate has made Apple products feel like luxury, I think the MacBook Neo is a conversation at least worth having. So drop a comment below if you're considering buying the MacBook Neo, or you just stick to getting a refurbished MacBook or a Windows PC around the same range or lesser. And if you're in Nigeria, let me know the price that you are seeing the MacBook Neo at in your place. I'm just curious. If this video helped, then do well to subscribe, and we'll see you in the next one. Peace.